Welcome to another Kings of War 3rd Edition Battle Report. Goblins versus Abyssals. The rematch. 2,000 points. The scenario was domination. So this is the same Forces of the Abyss army I've been using. It's 1,995 points. There's 12 units and a unit strength of 23. Starts off with a lower Abyssal Horde, which has the two-handed weapons and the Sacrificial Imp. An Abyssal Guard Regiment with the Mace of Crushing, two-handed weapons, and the Sacrificial Imp. An Abyssal Guard Regiment with two-handed weapons and the Sacrificial Imp. A Moloch Horde with the Sacrificial Imp, the Despoiler Champion add-on. And then another Moloch Horde with just a Sacrificial Imp. A Tortured Souls Regiment, which is one of my favorite units now. A Gargoyle Troop, two Imp Regiments. My Abyssal Warlock, he had Bane Chant, the Veil of Shadows, and I think he had the Conjurer's Staff as well. All right, then the Manifestation of Baal, and then the Abyssal Champion with the Wings and Lightning Bolt. All right, so this time I decided to change up my deployment. I've been playing against Polly for a while now, and one thing I know is to not do the same thing twice or he'll make me pay. So this time I kind of set up with double weighted flanks and nothing in the middle, which is, I would say, unusual because the objective in domination is to be in the middle, but I thought I could try to pinch in on both flanks and get to that point and use just the brute force of my guys to to kill a whole bunch of stuff. So anyway, my deployment from left to right, I had a unit of Abyssal Guard with a unit of Imps in front of them. The Tortured Souls were trailing the lower Abyssals. The Warlock standing next to the Gargoyles. Over in the middle, Baal is hiding behind a house. Then another unit of Imps and another unit of Abyssal Guard. Both units of Molochs, and behind the Molochs was the Aspiring Champion. He had Lightning Bolt and the Blade of Slashing. All right, down to the Goblin deployment. He kind of deployed all the way across the table, but I realized that his left flank was a little weaker than his right flank. So he started out with Fleabags on the bottom left, a Rabble Horde and a Rabble Regiment, and then one of his Bangets was hiding in the woods. On the back line were 3 catapults, or whatever they're called. In the middle is the Rabble Horde, and I think it had the Warbow of Kaba, and behind him is one of his mages. I think the one with may have had a Conjurer's Staff, but I don't recall. Then there were 3 hordes of trolls, and right in the middle of the trolls was his Winget, who was going to spot artillery on me. And there's also a Bagot that's in the front, and then another magic user. This one had the Inspiring Talisman. Over on the far right was yet another Rabble regiment, and then another Fleabag regiment. So he was strongly weighted to the right, and I was pretty much weighted equally, because of both sides, just because of the unit strength of both armies. But my plan was to do kind of a double pincher to come and get in the middle and use my flyers and fast stuff to cause mayhem as usual, and then let's see how the game went. So for turn 1 on the left flank, the Fleabags pretty much didn't move. One of the hordes of Rabble moved up slightly into the woods. The other horde of Rabble moved up to behind a wall to save some spots there. Much more aggressive over on this right flank. He angled 1 unit of trolls to flank my Molochs when they came in too close, and had the other 2 units of trolls moved up in the woods. The Winget spotted, I believe, on the unit of Imps over in front of my Abyssal Guard on the left side there, beside Baal. And then I don't know what happened. He moved this regiment of Goblins just hard left behind his other guys, and then his Fleabag Riders moved forward to threaten my army. He did do some shooting. I don't think it was particularly effective this game, unlike the last game where he blew off 2 of my units before they really even moved. So I moved up pretty aggressively on both flanks. The lower Abyssals and the Imps moved forward, along with the Tortured Souls and the Abyssal Guard. Behind the woods, I just left my Gargoyles. Every time I've brought my Gargoyles out early in a game, they die from something. I mean, you breathe air on them and they die. So I didn't want to bring them out anywhere close to where they can be shot or you had a spell thrown at them. Also left the Warlock back there just for a turn. I actually forgot maybe that I could have thrown my spell to keep from getting shot, but who wants to take that chance? Uh, Over on the right-hand side, the imps moved up close to the edge of the woods. I couldn't, since I marched, I couldn't go into the woods and try to get my base in there to charge through. Behind them, the Abyssal Guard. And just a key to playing games that I've learned to my chagrin in the last few weeks is to make sure that if you've got a unit of chaff in front of guys, make sure you've got enough room to pivot that unit. So an inch, inch and a half, I don't know how far back you have to be. It just depends on your unit, I guess. But it's just something I've learned because I've got myself stuck so many times now. Bale moved forward to throw a lightning bolt, and so did the aspiring champion. He was there over on the right hand side to try to shoot a shot at the flea bags. And the Molochs moved forward. I probably moved them too far forward. I should have just kind of half straddled that wall, so when I backed up the next turn, it would be a hindered charge. I kind of screwed that up on that side because, like I said, if I would have been half straddled the wall, I would have been in fine shape. So anyway, Bale opened up on that stupid Baggett, or maybe it was a wizard. I think it was a wizard, throwing 5 wounds on him. But the first roll, I killed it. The next roll, I didn't, so it's still there. And I think the aspiring champion did 1 wound to the flea bags. All right, so Polly this time moved out from behind the wall in the middle with his rabble horde, trying to move toward the objective, since domination is the key to the game here. The other horde that's in the woods moved up just to the edge of the woods. The regiment kind of held back, I think, to kind of ambush me behind that building, whatever his tower. His Baggett was also hiding behind the tower, and his Fleabag riders backed up because my Tortured Souls charge 18 inches, and I was kind of hoping to suck them in and kill them, but that didn't work. At the top, he moved closer to provoke a charge on my Molochs, or to get close enough range, but I realized very quickly that that was a big-ass trap, and I wasn't going to fall for it. So his shooting this turn had done, I guess, a couple of wounds to the lower Abyssals, a couple to the Imps, and then 3 to the Moloch horde on the left-hand side. His wounded magic users kind of hidden behind the woods, and then his regiment of rabble changed direction, was kind of moving in to help support his attack on the right-hand side. So in my turn 2, I went ahead and did a hard left toward the middle objective with my lower Abyssals. I was kind of safe because of the buildings and the rubble that's there. And I thought maybe if I threatened the left flank of his unit that's headed toward the middle, that would slow him down just for moving so fast. At the bottom, on the left-hand side, the Imps moved up trying to provoke a charge, and then the Abyssal Guard also moved up trying to provoke a charge. The Tortured Souls just stayed hidden behind the Abyssal Guard. Up on the right flank, the Imps and the Abyssal Guard moved into the woods to threaten the flank of the Trolls. And I think I must not have done any wounds from shooting because I don't see any marked on the units. But I'm pretty sure Bale and did some wounds to the leftmost Troll horde. And then I think the aspiring champion did like 1 point to the flea bags, but it was not a very good shooting turn. But I don't have a lot of shooting. I don't really depend on it. It's just nice to have it when you have it. So next turn 3 is going to be a pivotal turn in the game. So this is Polly's turn 3. Down in the left-hand corner, his flea bags continue to stay just out of range of my ability to charge with the Tortured Souls. I just want to make sure I charged him and not the other way around. His horde and his regiment stood by to ambush me, whoever came around the side of that house. Okay, in the middle, his horde of rabble moved onto the objective area, trying to score there. Always a good move if you're trying to win the scenario. In the woods, his trolls had charged into my Imps, and because he was hindered, he only did 3 wounds to him, which was excellent for me. Up in the upper right-hand corner, though, it were some unfortunate things happened. That's where I made the mistake of not moving too far past that wall. If I would only move like 3 inches or 4 inches, I could have backed back across the wall for a hindered charge. As it was, I got massively charged there. 2 units of trolls go into my left-hand unit of Molochs, and destroyed it. The flea bags charged into my other unit of Molochs and did a lot of damage to it, 6 or more, I think. And then up at the top, the winged went ahead and tried to shoot some grenades at my aspiring champion. He had moved the winged to get it out of the way so he could make the charges, because it was, he had used it to try to bait my charge. And I wasn't falling for it this time. Paul set me up on some really good traps in the past, but this time I was ready for it and I didn't fall for it. So down on the left-hand side, I left my imps to die and just turned my Abyssal Guard toward the middle, because of course that's how you win the game, is to be within 12 inches of the center of the game. The lower Abyssals just continued to march toward it. Now that sooner or later they're going to get clear of those woods. Of course, the gargoyles aren't going to do anything to the last turn except swoop in there to take that objective. Now the tortured souls did move this time and moved away from the fight in the corner. And the reason why is I was either going to want to threaten his other horde in the rear, the one down here in the trees from the side, or start killing war machines, one or the other. He also had a mage behind the wall right in the very center there who could be threatened by him. So the tortured souls were in good shape. Over in the middle, in the Battle of the Woods, between the imps and the Abyssal Guard, I managed to waver the troll horde that's in there. So that was a really good one. The other troll horde at the top, this turn it says waver on it, he got double teamed by all the shooting and got wavered himself. He's up to 7 wounds, so that was a pretty good shooting attack there. My Molochs had went ahead and easily destroyed the Fleabag Riders, and now was angled toward the other unit of trolls, which was intact. So good turn for me, just because I did manage to get rid of those and managed to get out of the trap up in the upper right-hand corner with the trolls and the Fleabag Riders. So I was kind of out of that trap. My shooting did a really good job of wavering. I rolled excellent in the melee in the woods, so a really good turn for the Abyssal forces. So on Polly's turn 4, he charged and destroyed my little unit of imps here on the left-hand side. So the Abyssal Guard now has their flank to them. They're just going to have to turn to face the Fleabag Riders. It's just too much of a... you can't let them charge in the flank. They're too good. All of his shooting did 3 wounds to my tortured souls, and you can see his hordes turn back toward him, just threaten their flank and to threaten the flank of my Abyssals, lower Abyssals at the top. In the woods, his combined attacks did, destroyed my unit of imps in the woods, because they had a flank charge from that big horde, and then the trolls, and his little unit of rabble had charged in. Only did 1 wound to my Abyssal Guard. So I wasn't too bad a shape there, but I'm sure that they're going to pay for it next turn, because there's a unit of trolls in their back arc. Up in the upper right-hand corner, even though I'd regained quite a few wounds from regeneration, he put that unit of Molochs up to 9, which is in the danger zone for a unit like that. So injured them pretty well, but I think I was fortunate, because he was hindered, even though he rolled really, really well. The hindered, it could have been worse, I guess is what I'm trying to say. They could have just blown him off the table in one go. Really, it's almost irrelevant to this game, some of the killing out on the peripherals, because that's not the point of this game. The point of this game is to get 12 inches of that middle deployment area to win the domination scenario. So I was trying to do that most of the game, just trying to figure out a way to get into that zone. And since I moved second, I was in a really good position, because I could cruise in on the very last turn if I wanted to, not be shot, not anything else, and just run in there and take that deployment objective in the middle of the table. So you can see here that the on the left-hand side, all I did was turn the Abyssal Guard toward those Fleabag Riders. Now, I don't really think they're that much of a threat to the Fleabag Riders, but they would be a hell of a threat if they were hitting them in the rear. So I had no choice but really just to turn them there. In the middle, I charged and killed his mage, and then pivoted my unit, because I knew I was I was out of charge arc of all of his shooting, or within its minimum range. So I was in pretty good shape there with those tortured souls. So I turned him toward the flank of his other rabble horde, just because I need him to react a little bit to it. At the very top, my lower abyssals moved into scoring range of that an air unit strength 4, so they moved in there onto that objective, or pretty close to the middle objective. My over here in the very middle, my abyssal guard just went ahead and charged into his goblin rabble regiment, hoping to destroy it. I did quite a bit of damage, but it rolled pretty poorly on the morale test, so that wasn't good. So up in the upper right-hand corner, I went ahead and charged Bale into that melee with the against that unit of trolls and easily wiped them out. Did quite a bit of good regeneration up there. My Abyssal Champion shot lightning bolts into that other troll horde. Now they're up to 7, but did not waver them or do anything to them. So I was looking in pretty good shape because I'm just trying to clog up that middle. What I don't need to happen is those units that are in the woods goofing around with that Abyssal guard. I don't need them to turn back toward the middle. So that's why I'm trying to threaten that so much that you can't afford to peel units off to go grab unit strength in the middle of the table. So in Polly's turn 5, he did manage to destroy my Abyssal Guard unit in the woods here on the right-hand side. And then his horde of goblins, goblin rabble, changed back to the middle, trying to contest that middle spot. His shooting, or I think magic, I'm not sure which one did it, but maybe the bang it and stuff did it. But they put 3 wounds on the tortured souls. And with the dice roll, it got up to 13, but they're 14 unbreakable, thank goodness. The abyssal, lower abyssals had taken some damage. Over here on the left flank, his flea bags rolled really well and got my abyssal guard up to 8 points of damage, which was an excellent roll. So that's the end. The turns are going really fast because a lot of my stuff is in fights, and so the shooting really doesn't have as much an effect on the game right now. That's the thing about shooting. When you sit there and you see 3 of those catapults and they're not really doing anything toward the end of the turn, you're thinking, boy, I could have had almost 2 more hordes of those goblin rabble to contest this scenario. So that's always the conundrum you run into with shooting, is that once things are joined, and if I can just keep joining melees one right after the other, then I don't have to worry about getting shot so much. So on my turn 5, what I did was I charged the tortured souls into the goblin rabble unit red horde down there, and the reason why is because even if he kills me on the next turn, all he's going to get is a little overrun. He's not going to get to do a whole move. So that effectively puts that horde out of the game. Over on the left-hand side, I managed to get the goblin flea bags over there up several wounds, I think 6 or so. Did not break or do anything to them. The lower abyssals just kept moving angling toward the center there, so not to get flank charged by something. And I mean, that was important. I just needed them to be parked there and not really do anything. Over on the right-hand side, the Molochs charged the wounded unit of trolls that had just charged my guys in the rear in the woods and just obliterated them. The Aspiring Champion did 3 wounds to the other troll horde. Maybe he didn't do any wounds to him. I don't remember. But anyway, Baal went ahead and charged the horde of rabble in the flank for the same reason. I just don't want them to move. So, I mean, really, it's the choice they have is to, I'm in their flank. If they move, then I'm maybe about to get a rear. Who knows? I mean, but they were kind of in a rock and a hard place in their endeavors this turn, I should say. So, anyway, I had an excellent turn 5 because now I've held up 2 units. Poised to fly my gargoyles in on the last turn. I already have 5 unit strength there within range of that, within range of the middle, and so I'm pretty happy right now with what I've got. But I've kept some units away, which is the key, I think, to this. Is like, even if I lose the units, it doesn't matter because this is a scenario. And to play the scenario, you can just keep sacrificing units all day as long as you've got the most unit strength for that middle. So I didn't separate Polly's turn 6 out, but you can kind of see what happened. Over on the left-hand side, the Abyssal Guard went ahead and destroyed that unit of Fleabag Riders and turned toward the center of the table. I didn't know if I could make it on if there was a turn 7 or not. Who knows? So I started wanting to change it, move in that direction because I did have the flank on that big horde down at the very bottom. Um, the I'd done 4 to those tortured souls, and I don't think he did anything back to me, or either that, or I had got some life leech and got a couple back, then lost a couple again. So there was no way they're breaking through that spot. And you can see my cowardly gargoyles doing what cowardly gargoyles do, running on the last turn of the game and stand next to the objective in the 12 inches of that deployment zone. His goblins had turned toward Bale and did, I think, 5 wounds to him or something absurd like that. But you know, they were going to score anyway because they were already, so they might as well try to kill something. The my Molochs went ahead and charged that other troll unit and easily destroyed it. That was just bizarre. He had charged me in the flank with his little goblins, his goblin regiment, and in the front with those other trolls. But I think they were both hindered, so it really reduced the number of hits. And then I just charged right back in and killed the trolls. So again, this is the very last turn. There was no turn 7, and so with the unit strength that I have, like I mean, I've got 5, 6 right there. With the horde, the gargoyles, and the warlock, so that's 6 right there. Polly has either 3 or 4 because of the horde, and I actually had 1 more because Bale was within 12 inches of the center of the table. So that would give me, let's see, 1, 4, 6 to 3 or 4. Just depends on how you scored that. I don't know the unit strength of a goblin rabble horde. I'm thinking though it's only 3 because I think 4 is what you get if you have spears. So anyway, it was another great game. I just played this scenario. I tried the whole game and didn't worry about getting so much getting shot or things like that. Just trying to get to that unit strength in the middle, and it looked like I wasn't going to, but then making that turn with the lower abyssals got them into position to score. All right, these are my final thoughts or my after-action review of every game. One of the things in this game was really I tried to focus entirely on that scenario. I knew that he had more unit strength than me. He had more shooting than me. He had pretty good maneuverability with those 2 fleabag units. So I really just tried to transport my lower abyssals into that middle spot. And they're fairly resilient because, they've got a high morale because they're a horde, and they're also have regeneration, so that makes them really hard to shift off there. So basically the only way you really can get to them and kill them is to charge them, unless your shooting just gets astronomical. Over on the right hand side of this battle, I really just was trying to keep everything occupied over there and keep it out of the middle. That was the whole goal. I knew I was going to get massacred over there because of the 3 hordes of trolls and the fleabags and some of the shooting stuff that's over there. So I knew I was in rough shape there, and like I say, I was just playing to hold out over there. Still ended up killing all the hordes of trolls, I'm pretty sure, with my forces that were on that side. So had a good game. As far as that side of the table, because when I lost that other Moloch unit, I knew I was going to be in a little bit of trouble, but I also knew just from my positioning that I was in probably pretty good shape, because you have to respond to Bale charging you in the flank. I don't care who you are. That's just too many swings with Vicious and Brutal and all that stuff to ignore. And over on the left-hand side of the table, mostly I was just trying to occupy. It was kind of a feint because I knew as soon as I got past those woods, I was going to turn those lower abyssals across that middle and go toward the middle objective. So by messing around over there, I kept everything occupied, and then the tortured souls, holding them in reserve for as long as I did was a winning thing, because they what kept the other horde from getting into the middle to score. So anyway, I really thought it was a good game from the Abyssal standpoint. I don't know what Polly could have done much differently. I think he did a great job, but honestly, I think what I would have done was piled all 3 hordes right in the middle of the table and move toward that center objective and make the fight about it, because hordes, don't matter if they're a goblin rabble or whatever, they're hard to shift. And so I really think that maybe what I would have done is just piled all 3 hordes together and just went for the middle like crazy. and use all my other units as support chaff to keep those units intact. I mean, even if you lost all the hordes, all the flea bags and all of those trolls, it doesn't matter because you would have still had a tremendous amount of unit strength on that middle objective. And that's what I would have probably done differently in this game. I really like the fact that he put the flea bags in his list. I mean, I like the flea bags in the list, but I also like one of those flea bag units to be sniffs instead of just being the fighty ones, because they are really good at just sitting back doing nothing and shooting while they're doing nothing. I really like it. And then if you leave a flank open, they got a 20-inch charge, and they'll tear you up because they're still vicious. Now they're not going to get the crushing one like the other guys do, but they're still vicious. And so, especially things like my Abyssal Guard or something like that, the armor's only 4, or lower Abyssals that have low armor. I mean, they're a real threat to them. So anyway, like I said, I like Polly's list. I don't know what I would change too much about it, but I like a little bit more with the Luggets and stuff like that. It's something that's a little fightier and maybe a little bit less shootier, because it really showed at the end of this game he really didn't have anything that could handle my Molochs and stuff like that. They're just too strong, and not having some way also to kind of prevent my flyers from just taking advantage of him late in the game, which is where flyers, if you've been able to preserve your flyers so late in the game, that is definitely a winning strategy. Anyway, Polly, another good game. Hopefully that's the last of the Goblins I see for a while, and we'll go on to something else.